here we're just going to show some of the things that you would need to build our audio box. This is from Adafruit. You need a audio amplifier, which we got 2 of. There's a mini soundboard that is 2 megabytes, and we also ordered a soundboard that was 16 megabytes. They look identical. There's our 16, and there's our 2 megabyte. However, the 16 megabyte will hold much more information. Here's some of your prices for that. So your audio box is going to run about $9 each, and then $15 for the 2 megabyte, and the 16 is about $20. And then also here's some pictures of our soundboards, which you need for each one. And then you also use a micro USB cable to plug it into the computer.
Once you have decided what size of chip you want, it's time to load up your songs on it, which we've made another video about how to load up all of the music and audio onto your chip. So I'm just gonna give you a quick glimpse of what it looks like. Once you've plugged in the mini USB, it'll look like this. The green light will come on, and then you can go ahead and search on your computer. I have Audacity pulled up already, as that was how I cut all of the different songs, and my device appears as Adafruit. I'm going to click on that, and then here are all of the songs that I've already uploaded to it. So once again, you use the T0 file name in order to tell the chip which port you want that specific file to go to. And once again, I have utilized randomized files.
We have all of the materials we need to make our audio box. So we actually have our actual box. You can have different sizes. We're just looking at the bigger ones right now. You're going to need a speaker, which we will later wire into. That'll go through the top. You're going to come in, you're going to drill holes for your speaker and also for all of your brackets here. Your switch, your on-off switch, is going to be this guy. This is a vintage switch that we have salvaged from another project. Here we've got our little ports that our dollar switch will plug into. That will be mounted in here. Just a little screw that comes off, mounted in, screw it back on. We have, like previously shown, our soundboard as well as our audio amp. And to connect all, and we have our battery pack here that will plug in as well. We solder everything on with multi-stranded wire, not solid core, and using lead-free solder, and of course our wire strippers. And then we also have another video on how to make these wonderful dollar switches that you can plug into multiple ports.
So when you open up your bag the amp comes in, these are all the different parts that will be in it. You will not need to use these parts, but we will be using these ones. So we're going to show you how to put it all together in just a few minutes. So this is how the little blue guy sits on there, and then we're going to solder from the bottom. So in order to solder, we're going to flip it over. Before you start soldering, always remember to put on safety glasses. You never want any solder to get in your eyes or anything. So this is our soldering iron. We know that it's ready when it makes that nice little sizzling sound. I've cleaned it off, so now we can start soldering. You just want to heat it up and then get a dollop of the solder on there. And once it's all heated, you're going to go ahead, just move it so that way it's covering the entire gold portion. You can't see any more of that gold circle exposed anymore. And for additional soldering techniques, feel free to look at our website, SAU, and we have some tutorials on how to solder.
Okay, so the first part of our soundboard that we're going to wire up here is the ones that are labeled with numbers. Remember, you start with 0. So you can see at the top there's a reset, 1, 2, 3, 4 through 7. We're just going to do 0 through 4 because we have 5 ports that they'll be going to. And as you can see, they come all the way down to these ports here. And then you can't forget you also have a ground, which is our last guy right here, this little G. And this guy's going to run over here, and it's going to connect here, and it's going to be our ground that runs between each of our ports.
Alright, so here are all of our wires. We've done 5 wires to run to all of our ports. So we're going to start with 0 for the first one. It's easiest when it comes to soldering if you put it in there, and then you're going to flip it over and just bend it, so that way it stays there and you don't have to worry about holding it as much. I'm going to clip it into here. When you clip it into anything to have it hold it, just a reminder, make sure that you're not having it touch anything that you wouldn't want damaged. So I'm going to very carefully clip that right on that circle portion.
All right, so we're going to wire up some power to our board here. So we're going to take our left speaker and come to our left plus. We're going to come back and get our ground, and we're going to ground it to our left minus. You can also use your right plus or minus, just make sure it correlates with your blue box here. As you can see at the top, this is left out minus, and this down here is right. So we're going to go ahead and stick with our left. We've already put in our outward bound negative. So for our L plus that we're going to put in here, we're going to take our wire and we're actually going to put some solder on the end of it, because you're going to stick it in here and screw that down, and it just helps to have a little more solder on it. So just real quick here, less is more. Don't put a bunch on there because it won't go in, as we found. I'll let that dry a little, cool down. Then we're going to come in here and we're going to put it right in.
So next we're going to solder our wires onto the speaker, which I have already done here. So we're going to take the wire, the L minus wire, which is the blue and brown one, and we run it to the negative side, as you can see. And then we do the same with the plus side, which is the red wire, and it's run to the plus side there. You want to make sure that these wires stay pretty long because they sit in the lid, and that way when you take off the lid, there's a lot of room for the speaker to move back and forth, and you're not going to be worried about ripping it off or anything like that. Also, when it comes to soldering onto the speaker part, you want to make sure that you're not letting the soldering iron sit too long on these previous holes. There were 2 holes that were right there that are now filled with solder. If you overheat it, you can damage the speaker. So those are just things to keep in mind. So the next wires that we're going to work on is coming from the VN port, which is right here. As you can see, I have done 2 of them. They are a little bit different in length. This one is going to end up running to the ports of the audio box, and this one is going to be running over here to the amp. So next we're going to flip it over and solder it. Once we have soldered our VN cords or wires, we're going to then solder a wire into the ground position. This wire can be short again, as it is just going to the amp. Next, I'm going to be taking my VN wire, and I'm going to be running it to the VDD spot on the amp, and I'm going to solder it just like I have with other ones. My next step is going to be my ground on the amp. So I'm going to take my ground wire from the soundboard, and it's going to be run to the ground port. But also, now we're going to be bringing in the battery pack. So I'm going to take the black wire from my battery pack and that ground wire from the soundboard, and they're both going to go into that port and solder it. And this is what it looks like with the battery pack and the ground from the soundboard, both soldered into the ground on the amp. So we started by putting on a template onto the roof of the box, and we just used the soldering iron to identify where the holes are that we're going to be drilling through. And this is what the holes look like when we're done. So next we're going to be using a drill press to drill into the holes and make them a little bit larger. This is for the speaker to be mounted into. So that was using a hole saw to cut a bigger hole where the speaker will actually sit, and then we will use sandpaper to smooth those edges off.
Okay, once you get the right depth, then it makes it real simple.
So this is the side of our box. We just drilled holes into it, and we had initially used masking tape and then a ruler to decide where the holes were going to go. You want to make sure that none of the holes are going to be coming in or drilling into the sides of this. We are having a little bit of an issue with the depth of the plastic, so we're going to have to drill a little bit more on the inside so that way the ports and power switch can sit in there and reach the outside more comfortably. So there's just not enough room for this to
Yeah,
stick
you
out.
need to be in there deeper so the threads can be.
So this hole we have drilled into on the inside a little bit more so that way the port can stick out and the threads are more visible, and then this one still has to be worked on. You can tell the difference in height right there. This is what it looks like on the inside. You can tell that this one has been worked out a little bit more, whereas the rest of them haven't, and this was the one where the threads stick out a little bit more onto this side. So next we figured out where we want everything to sit in the box, so that way we could identify how long our power wires needed to be, since they will be running to the on-off switch, which is going to be sitting in this one, and then all of these ones will become ports, which will be runoff of those wires.
Alright, so here we have our switch that we're going to put in our box for our on-off, and as you can see I have one coming from the battery here and one coming from our sound box, and you just link them into the first one in the middle and you leave the last one. We've hooked up power, put in our batteries to run a test. So I have the switch to the side that my wires come out, and that's off. So if I turn it on, and I look for my green light here, and now these are all going to ports, and then this guy coming out here is my ground to my ports, so I can actually test them by picking someone and touching the wires.
Alexa, play children's music.
And we'll get a command. I can actually test. So that'll be our 30 seconds, and then we just connect these to ports and this to the ground, and we're done.
So last we showed how you can test if this is working or not. We now have put all of the ports into the holes, which are really easy to do. You just slip it right through the hole, put a washer on the outside just to hold it. We didn't tighten the washer all the way just because we're not 100% sure. You never know if something's going to go wrong, so you don't want to make it so you can't get it back out again. And then once we put them in, we ran grounding wires on the top of every port, and they're just short little guys that go across. They run from each one. We just soldered them on the top. It's a little hole. And also when we went to do the ports, there is a little piece that is attached right here that we cut off because you don't need it. You just need the top and the bottom in order to run power to them. And then on the very last hole, our grounding wire from our chip, which we taped down because it was a little bit longer, is run to the very first port. So this port is 0. This is 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then in this hole is power, and I will show you how we're going to stick that in next. Next, I decided how I want everything to lay out in the box. So I have the chip, which has all of the wires that are going to be run to ports right there. And then I'm going to put the amp down here. And I decided to put the battery pack here because it's closest to the power button, so that way it allows for the most slack when people want to switch out the batteries if they decide to take out the box. I'm going to need to put some Velcro down in the bottom so everything can stay and stop moving, so that's going to be my next step. and then I'm going to start running these to all of the various ports. I'm going to be using this Velcro, which just has adhesive on the back of it. Comes in some pretty big spools. I'm going to put the soft side without the hooks on the bottom, because that way it's not going to be rough if you reach into the box. Now I have added Velcro to all of them. As you can see, I just kind of cut it down so it fits nice. This side there's some soldering sticking out, but it'll still work. And this one doesn't really cover up the whole back, but it'll at least make it so that it will stick in there without it moving, which is all that we really want out of this. So now I'm ready to start running the cords from our sound chip to the ports. As you can see, I've run the first one here. I did move the box out of the way just so I can get my fingers in there a little bit easier. Small holes, small wires. Want to make sure that I'm not gonna get anything tangled up. Make sure that we're running the 0, which, sorry, is being blocked by our battery ground. So we're running cord 0 to port 0. Remember, port 0 is the one which ground runs to first. So now I'm going to be soldering it right here. Anything extra that's sticking out, like this wire, can be clipped. I did bend the wire, as you can see, just so it's staying there without being soldered. It'll help soldering go a little bit faster. Now, since I have that first one soldered, I'm going to go ahead and do the same with the rest of these cords. I'm just going to pull them out one by one. As you can see, I've had them zip tied. I did cut this one down a little bit. I want to make sure that there's a little bit of room in case the clients want to pull this out, or in case you guys want to pull this out, load up some more information to the chip using the mini USB. For the most part, you should be able to run a mini USB with it sitting on the Velcro, but in case someone decided that they wanted to pull it out first, I did just leave a little bit of length on the cord, so I'm going to leave about that much for the other wires. It is important to remember that these wires, you don't want them to touch the speaker, so if for as much of a loop that we have going on right now, we might have to kind of push them down in there once we go ahead and finish the box. Now I've run all of the wires to the ports, as you can see. I'm gonna go in next and just clip off the little extras that you can see that are hanging over. They just don't need to be there, and it's more cosmetic than anything. So now it's the moment of truth. We have everything hooked up where it should be. Our speaker is not in the box lid yet, but that's okay. We're gonna give it a test run at this. This is our dollar switch here, so it looks like that. Get everything all lined up. I'm going to give it some power. See our green light on.
There was a farmer, had a
And
dog.
sounds like that one's working. So next, let's do port 2. Okay. Looks like we all have everything working, so that's really exciting. Now we're going to go ahead and put our speaker into the lid. And we have our lid that we showed a while ago. We did go ahead and sand off the edges. We don't want anything to be sharp. As you can see, I've put in 3 other ones so far. They're not tight all the way. I just put them in to at least hold everything. We put the screw in, and then we put a washer on. And then we put a lock on, and then another washer. And as you can see, the washer can kind of bump up against the side of the speaker, so it's pretty big holes that the speaker has, so it gives us room to move around as needed. This is our final project. We went ahead and screwed in all of the sides. One thing missing would be a sticker on the inside referring to what is in each port, so that way people know. And we're going to give it a test run now.
There was a farmer, had